Dystopia tonight.
Fuck out of town! Fucking treasonous pieces of shit!
Dystopia tonight.
Hey, what's going on, man? After that intro, it's always interesting to be like, how are you doing? What is going on? Are you okay?
I am okay. Your intro made me smile.
Oh, fantastic.
I grew up with all those movies. I didn't see anything from War of the Gargantuas in there, but uh,
Oh, that I'm gonna write that. That would be a great addition.
absolutely,
I'm
yeah,
gonna.
that's a classic.
Oh my
And
god.
you know, uh, yeah, I grew up with those movies, and I'll never forget the first Godzilla movie that actually came to movie theaters when I was a kid was Godzilla versus Megalon.
Oh
And it was so exciting to go to a movie theater and see a Godzilla movie with all my friends.
yeah.
And to this day, I have really fond memories of that. And then the very first episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000 that I ever saw
Hmm.
was Godzilla versus Megalon.
Oh.
And we were on tour. This was back in like 91 or 2, and I was in my hotel room and I discovered the show. I'd never even heard of it. And I was laughing so hard. The next morning, I got into the van with my bandmates, and Bill said, "What were you watching last night? You were laughing so hard." And uh, anyway, so I've always loved that kind of stuff. Love a good monster movie.
It was probably my first go to when making that intro. I was just like, the whole obviously the show is called Dystopia Tonight. I started it during the pandemic, so it kind of fit into the frame of that. But I was like, I couldn't help but think like the word dystopia is tossed around so much, and obviously we're all feeling some level of that now, almost 24/7. But I was like, other
Oh
than just
yes.
news clippings, I'm like, I kind of want to throw in some of my favorite old school monster movies too, just because it could happen. Something could crawl out of the ocean at any moment, and we just be like, okay,
Well,
okay,
yeah,
why
yeah.
not? Why not? Um,
Yes, the world is going to hell, but
yeah,
anyway, you and I are here to save it. Okay.
absolutely, and that's the key to all this too. How do you? I mean, I know you guys are out on the road and you've got your your tour mates, your bandmates, stuff like that, and music and everything too. But do you have coping mechanisms that you seek, that you go to, that you cultivated over the years that kind of help you deal with the outside perspective, like so that not too much outside shit gets in while you're doing your art?
Yeah, yeah, I certainly do. I try to stick to a routine of exercise and sleep.
Mm.
So I exercise every day, and then I take a nap every afternoon. Actually, right now is my nap time.
Oh no.
And so within an hour from now, I might just fall asleep in mid sentence because my body has been trained over the last decade or so to fall asleep every afternoon somewhere around this time.
Mm.
And I sleep for like a solid hour of deep REM sleep, and that's it. And I fall asleep easier in the afternoon than I do at night. I'll lay there for hours
Me too.
sometimes at night. But exercise, try to have a decent meal, and then get into bed and take a little bit of a nap. And other than that, the routine of the show is just to go there and try not to irritate any of my bandmates, uh, and just kick ass at what I do.
Yeah.
And then my least favorite moment of the day is always like getting back to my hotel room.
Oh.
I find that very just kind of a depressing moment. at the end of the day, where you get back to the Hampton Inn or whatever it is, and realize, okay, now I've got 5 hours or I've got 8 hours until I got to get up and go to the airport
Oh
again.
my God,
So,
I know. Isn't that is the worst part of doing that kind of shit? I've been doing comedy for like 20 years, and literally the in between time of any of that shit, like, there's the initial like driving there, especially if I'm driving there with like a comic that I love and we're going out on the road together or whatever, and that's always fun. But then there's that moment after the show where you have all this fucking energy and you're in the hotel and you're like, this sucks.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a
it
lot of
does.
time.
It blows. And seeing as often as we play, I'm in something around 80 hotel rooms a year,
Mm,
100, maybe 100 hotel rooms a year, and airplanes and stuff like that. And
yeah,
it's not a lot of fun, that aspect of it, but it's all of that is in service to being on stage for 90 minutes a day,
yeah.
and that I very much enjoy, and that's why I continue to do
Yeah.
this.
Isn't that cool that that's the reward is like, like you'll put up with, shitty airline services or traffic or, like complications on the road or any of that stuff. But the minute you get to go on stage in front of people, it just disappears. You're like, oh yes, this is why. Like this is the reward. I get to do what I love.
Yes, absolutely. And just I enjoy virtually every show, not every single one,
Hmm.
but we do about 100 shows a year, and um maybe twice or 5 times a year do I come off stage and be like, that sucked. What is the fucking point?
Yeah.
It's very rare, and but most of the time it's really satisfying. And as long as my bandmates and I are healthy and enjoying ourselves, then it's all worth it.
Yeah. Do you find your perception of a show that you don't particularly enjoy is uh matched by an audience, or do you, because there's times, when I'm doing comedy or whatever, where I know I'm like, oh man, I phoned that shit, you know what I mean, or like that did not feel good to me or whatever, but the audience has no clue, so they're just like, that would, and you're just like, oh, you should have seen me last week, I was so good. But like, do you find that that's the case most of the time?
Not most of the time. I think most of the time I feel like I'm in the moment
Mm,
and performing well and connecting with people and enjoying our catalog of music.
yeah.
Is so, as often as we play, um, yeah, it's only a handful of times a year where I feel like, well, that was stupid, or or whatever. I'm pretty consistent as a performer,
Hmm.
and I do very much enjoy the reciprocal energy between myself and the audience. For me as the front man, I feel like that's my main objective, is to have some moments of connection, where we all feel like we're in it together.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty lucky to be consistent and to have bandmates that are consistent, and for us to have an audience, and to be able to go virtually anywhere on this continent, and
Absolutely.
have a good audience that knows our material.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
it's
my God.
quite satisfying.
Yeah, I'm sure you get a bunch of dudes around my age who look like me who are basically just like, I grew up with your music. But I mean, there is not, I think if you're looking at a soundtrack of my life, especially me and my friends' lives, I do not have a memory of growing up without a Gin Blossom song in my head or in the background of a party or a night, sitting on a friend's car, growing up, and at that point too, being like, super young and being like, oh man, our lives, dude, like, like, like just that kind of shit. But also like, even when I was younger too, because I lived in Arizona, for when I was like, I was born in Brooklyn, and my mom didn't necessarily want to raise me there for other particular reasons. My dad being, my dad, who he was at the time. And this is before they got divorced. So we moved to Arizona. We lived there for like 4 years, and my mom's family was out there. And my aunt and uncle went to like your rival high school, right? So like we had gin, like they knew, like, I think they'd gone to your shows. So like the Gin Blossoms were just, I have memories of being a kid, and like when I think of Arizona, I just think of you guys. Like I know all the songs, and like when I've gone back, to do shows there or whatever, or like I'll be driving down like, McClintock, or I'll be in Tempe, or I grew up in Tempe. So like, we'll be out there, and man, it's just flooded with memories of the Gin Blossoms. So I'm just like,
That is great.
yeah, that
Thank
can't
you.
be, that's got to be awesome to have that, just know that all your music means so much to so many people. Like, do you guys talk
Yes.
about it?
Well, I honestly, I gotta say, what you just said
Hell
is
yeah.
one of the more,
Hell yeah, man.
uh, one of the more cool and uplifting things I've heard in a long time. I very much identify my personal identity and the identity of the band with Arizona. So
Beautiful.
the words that just came out of your mouth really fill me with pride. Because
Oh, awesome, dude.
I'm all about Arizona
Yeah.
here on Long Island. Yay!
No, dude, I totally get it, man. I'm out in Jersey, and it's just, I love to. I always kind of ask and get into, I love to know the trajectory of any artist or any performer that I have on the show in general. Do you have music, like in a background in your family? Does anybody else in your family have, a talent for and singing, or instruments or anything like that, or are you the first?
I'm kind of the first. My father played drums, and when he was a teenager, he was in a couple of bands. He actually met my mother at a show where he was performing, but he
Wow.
he gave that up, and I've never seen him perform on stage, or I've never seen him play with a band or anything like that. So I kind of developed my love of music sort of completely in a vacuum and separate from that. Although his record collection, those are the first records I ever heard, and
Oh,
so
nice.
in my mind, Buddy Holly and the Beach Boys,
Yeah.
Dion and the Belmonts,
Oh,
and
yeah,
things
yeah.
things like that. Those early memories of music certainly, kind of pushed me in this direction. But my taste I developed in starting when I was about 8 years old. I started to listen to music entirely on my own and choosing my own direction and my own taste. And mostly I just remember my dad coming into my bedroom, and I'm lip syncing in front of the mirror to Queen or
Right.
whatever, and just him standing there in the doorway going, "How can you listen to this shit?" Or whatever. And there was never a moment where he walked into my room and heard me listening to the Cars or whatever and said, What is this? This sounds actually pretty good." In fact, the
Right.
exact opposite. I remember him coming in to my room. I think I was like 20 years old. I was listening to Paul Simon Graceland, which is such a
Oh,
such a great record.
yeah, the best.
And he comes into my room, and without even really paying any attention, he just starts in with the, "How can you listen to this shit?" And I looked up at him, and I just said, "Dad, this is Paul Simon."
Yeah.
I wasn't listening to Metallica or
Right.
Dead or Alive, or some weird uh new wave, or something flamboyantly gay or metallic or whatever. It was
Right.
fucking Paul Simon, and
Right.
it just went right over his head, and was like, "Wow, how can you listen to this shit?" And so I never really related to him in that way. But from the time that I first heard Queen, when I was 8 years old, I have been on this trajectory, and
That's great.
rock and roll has been the main force in my life.
Hmm.
And everything from, well, not everything, but almost all of my energy from that moment in the third grade until now has been focused on becoming a rock singer. And you know
Yeah, that's
here I am.
incredible, man.
Here
Uh,
I am.
did they enjoy seeing, like, did you were you comfortable inviting them out to shows when you were starting out,
Yeah,
or
sure.
that's
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
sure.
awesome.
My dad came to see us a few times in the early days, and he would come every once in a while, But I mean, I have a son who performs. He's also an aspiring musician.
Sweet.
He's 23 years old, and I joined Jim Blossoms when I was 23.
Oh wow.
Um, and I've seen my son perform with his bands more in the last year than my dad ever saw me in my entire life. Or maybe not quite. I think I've seen my son probably at least 7 or 10 times in the last year, and so I've probably seen him perform at least 50 times. And I would guess my dad has probably seen maybe a total of 20 Jim Blossom shows
Oh.
over the course of my lifetime. So, but no big deal. Eventually, he eventually got to a point where he was like proud of me and impressed, that I
Yeah.
was making a living doing it, and getting little things along the way, like appearing on the Tonight Show, or
Yeah.
being inducted to the Arizona Hall of Fame or something like that. There were moments where he was like, "Who knew? I guess you knew what you were talking about all that whole time,
Yeah,
but
and
but
that's
as
kind of
as a
satisfying.
kid, when it was just starting out, and for those first several years, it was just like, you're a fucking idiot,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
yeah.
I proved him, you
Yeah.
know.
No, that's the best feeling too, is like, like, you want your parents to be proud of you, and everything too, and you want them to do whatever, but there's something just about being like, yeah, see, I like something, knowing of something about yourself that's inherently true, and then proving it at some point. You're like, oh, nothing beats that.
Yeah,
That's pretty great.
absolutely.
Do you I think so I'm going to go back to some of your, growing up in music and stuff like that too. But like, uh, Madeline Smithberg is a friend of mine, and she's one of the producers and bookers for the Jon Stewart show on MTV.
All
Um,
right.
yeah, and she booked you guys, and I like that. I remember. I think that may have been one of the first times I actually saw you guys on TV. Was that your? But that wasn't your first time. Was it Letterman first, or
We had done Letterman already, and we
I
had
thought
been
so.
to MTV to do Alternative Nation. But
Right.
yeah, the Jon Stewart show, we were invited back to MTV to perform on that,
Hmm.
and that was actually a life-changing moment for me, because that's when I met my ex-wife. She was the floor director
Oh
on
wow.
on the Jon Stewart show, and her name is Jenna Rossitano, and I'm here on Long Island in her fucking hometown because of that moment,
Wow.
and we had been in Europe. This was like we had just come back from Europe. We were there opening for Spin Doctors in the summer of
Oh, great
'93,
band. Yeah.
and I spent that whole tour. I never kissed a girl like all summer. And we got back to the United States, and all the girls at MTV were so cute and so
Mm,
good looking, and there were a lot of girls working there. And my ex Jenna, she was just adorable, and I fell for her like right away. And I remember being on stage and seeing her out by the cameras and just being like, I gotta get, I gotta know this girl. I want to meet this girl. And
yeah.
um, so yeah, we started dating soon after that, and we got engaged. When we got married, actually, we were married by Jon Stewart. We had him
Get the
ordained.
fuck out of here.
Yeah,
That's
we had
amazing.
We had him ordained as a minister, and John married us here in the backyard at this house. Where I live now, this was Jenna's childhood home,
Holy shit.
and after we split up and she inherited this house from her parents, it became the logical thing and the best thing for our family for me to move in here and kind of steward this place. So
Wow.
I've managed to kind of make it my own. So John married us here in the summer of '96. And just backing up a little bit, our second record, Congratulations, I'm Sorry, came out in like January of '96. And we had a top 10 single and went on Saturday Night Live
Yeah.
in March of '96. And the director at the time, her name was Beth McCarthy, and
Okay.
she's a big Hollywood director.
Yeah.
And at the time she was at Saturday Night Live, she was a very close friend of Jenna's from their days at MTV together. And she offered Jenna a job. And so I was on the show in March of '96. And in the fall of '96, Jenna started working at Saturday Night Live as the floor director there. And so
Holy shit.
she has been floor director at Saturday Night Live since the fall of 1996. And this week she's at work doing the 50th anniversary show, and so it's the 50th anniversary. Jenna's been there for 29 years now.
That
So
is incredible, man. Good. That
good.
is. Are you going to the party? I think it's this week.
No, no. She's got her hands full, and
Yeah.
yeah. There's too many. I've been to the show many times,
Yeah. Yeah.
and my son kind of grew up there, so everybody there
Incredible.
knows him, and he's got a part-time job now at NBC as a stagehand for Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon.
Holy shit, dude.
And so that the Saturday Night Live is like John Stewart. These things are, they're foundational into the trajectory of where my life ended up.
Wow.
And so, I feel a very, very deep connection to John, even though I haven't spoken to him in 25 years or something. But
Wow. I was gonna
um,
say,
I,
whatever happened to that guy? Is he still doing okay?
he's
Uh,
doing all right. Yeah, he does okay.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I feel a great when I go to Saturday Night Live and I get to attend the show. I have really great memories, not only of having been on the show while our band had a top 10 single, which is
Yeah.
something that every up and coming musician would dream of, having a moment like that.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
but then also, I mean, I remember bringing my son Gray when he was just a baby. I remember taking him down there and showing him off to the cast, and
Wow.
and so everybody down there at SNL feels they all love my kid. So good for him.
That is you hit like one of my man, I'm gonna have to, I was literally just gonna phrase this horribly. I was gonna be like, you hit one of my soft spots, and then it would have been a bad clip and yada yada yada. But I said it anyway, so here we are.
Yeah.
But but no, what I'm saying is this is how much of a music comedy nerd, show business nerd I am, where that what you just explained right there, all those connections going throughout the whole thing. I am obsessed with timelines like that. And because everybody knows somebody in this, but that's what they say, it's a small business. But to still have that, like, that family connection, and your ex-wife and then your son and then SNL and John Stewart, like, that's incredible. That's a piece of, like, history, that everybody has these small little connections to each other that you don't really think about when you're a fan of a band and watching a TV show, or like there's so much going on behind the scenes. It's just incredible to listen to that and hear it, man. It's a great story, dude.
Thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and yeah, it's very meaningful to me, and the fact that my kid works at NBC now
Yeah.
is great. I love it,
Yeah.
and
When he
he's also a college radio DJ,
Oh,
and
that's
so
fantastic.
that touches me in a pretty deep spot.
Hell yeah.
And I'll never forget the first time I went on the air with him, and like trying to explain to me how it works. And it was so funny. And like, oh, I think I got this, Gray. I've been on the radio before, and he's like, all right, well, this is your microphone, and when you talk into it, rah, rah, rah," I'm like, oh, I think I'm gonna be okay,
Yeah.
So anyway, it's great, and he's a great kid.
How are you as a dad imposing advice? Do you when you see, are you kind of forthcoming with it, or are you like, I'll let him come to me, or like what's your method there?
It depends. Most of the time, I'm just kind of hands off, and
Mm,
I feel like he needs to make decisions for himself. And then there are other moments where I want where I do want to explain the future to him, and if you go down this pathway, then you're going to end up here or whatever.
right.
But mostly, um, most of my advice, like I say, I kind of keep a hands-off approach, but when it comes to how I keep my house,
Mm.
uh, I'm like, no, I like my sponges here, Gray or
Yeah.
whatever. When you put the broom away, make sure it's like this or
Right.
those kinds of preferences. I don't hesitate, but
Sure.
just as an example, he's a terrible driver. He's so slow, and every time you get in the car, the ride will take 25% longer with him driving than it will with like anybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
And this morning, coming home from the gym, my head was about to explode because he just kept missing the lights. And I just sat there taking it, and
Yeah.
my instinct is to say, "Can you please speed up just enough to make the light?"
Right.
But but he's got to figure a lot out on his own.
I
So
hear
so I just let him go.
I hear you.
I've done enough. I mean, I also his mother and I have both instilled in him a very deep love of rock and roll and of
Nice.
music. And there have been several great moments of connection with him on about music.
Mm.
And uh, I feel like that was kind of enough. And
Yeah.
to the uh and also now he's a DJ at a college radio station, so he'll play for me stuff that I haven't heard, and
Oh,
so
that's
I'm
great.
always grateful. But then there's always these great moments where just like I remember several years ago, and I said to him, have you ever heard Rush? And he's like, no, who's that? And I'm like, you've never heard Rush?
Wow.
I'm like, well, dude, prepare yourself.
Yeah.
And you put on Tom Sawyer for the first time,
Hell yeah.
and see that power, the power of that moment of discovery. There have been many, many moments like that along the way, and now he's an aspiring musician.
Beautiful.
He's starting to write songs. We're here in our studio recording something that he wrote,
Nice.
and I'm letting him make all of the decisions,
That's
and
so
so
cool.
we keep getting to a point where he's saying, well, I think it's done, and I'm like, well, there's no tambourine, or whatever, but it's his call,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've got a few ideas for the track he's recording right now that I'd like to see him implement, but ultimately it's his decision, it's his music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It must be like, did your method of recording music change at all during the pandemic? Because I remember talking to people who, I mean, obviously now, you've got your own studio and stuff like that too, but you work with your bandmates and stuff. I had some people I'd interviewed who felt a complete and total different freedom of not having a producer on their music and just being able to kind of transfer files between other people. And then I had other people who were like really kind of going crazy because their whole process is being in a room with other musicians and taking hours and hours and hours to kind of do it and not doing it solo. Did you find anything kind of change for you, or did you enjoy that time
Yeah.
or process?
I Nothing really changed for me. I've been at this for a while,
Mm.
and I mean, I started with a Tascam 4 track back in the '80s, and I still have one
Oh, that is
here.
so sick.
So I still like to work that way, but I'm
Yeah.
finally learning Pro Tools.
Mm.
I but To answer the second part of your question, I really did enjoy the pandemic,
Yeah.
because I didn't have any choice. None of us had any choice, and
Yep.
given the choice, I would have been out in the world. But
Sure.
since I didn't have any choice, it was the first time in my adult life that wasn't traveling all the time. And it was the first time since I was 23 years old where I was going to be home for more than 2 weeks at a time.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed it. I almost immediately started doing live streams from the studio because
Yeah.
I felt so useless at the top of the pandemic because I realized who was important. Well, the sanitation department, the nurses, the people that keep the grocery and liquor stores open.
Yeah.
Those people are essential to a functioning society. I'm just a rock singer,
Mm.
my worth is really sort of tenuous.
Sure.
And I so I thought, well, the only thing I have to offer is this vast catalog of music that I've learned. And so I started doing live streams, and I made that like the something that I would look forward to every week. I would get dressed up like I was doing a real show in front of an
Yeah.
audience, and I would come down here um, and I would do it. And eventually, also by spring of 2020, when it got warm enough, I started doing my live streams out in the front yard, and my neighbors would all be gathered in their yards in lawn chairs with bottles of wine and stuff like that. And so my neighbors were the only people in America getting like quality live music in the middle of
Sure.
the pandemic. And so that really gave me a sense of community and purpose.
Hmm.
And on top of that, I I've always loved video games, and
Oh,
suddenly in the pandemic, I had the opportunity to play a lot of video games, and
hell
so
yeah.
I really enjoyed that, because the kind of games that I like to play require a huge investment of time.
Hmm.
And uh, so I really got into playing video games. I played a lot with my son. We would play all the Mario stuff, Mario
Yeah.
Karts and whatnot. And then on my own, I was playing like these really deep action RPGs. And one of the first ones that I got into was The Last of Us,
Oh God,
and
so fucking good, right?
such a great game.
Uh.
And the Last of Us 2 came out that summer, so
Hmm.
I finished The Last of Us 1 like the week that The Last of Us 2 was released.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
so I spent
Lucky.
such a huge portion of that summer playing a pandemic video game during the pandemic. And it was so funny to me because, I'd be in the game and you'd be running through these like empty playgrounds and stuff. And,
Yeah.
and then I would get out on my bike to go to the park, and it was the same thing,
Yeah.
and, the streets of New York were empty, and it was really surreal. We had
Yeah.
whales swimming in the Hudson River and that kind of shit,
Yes.
and I'm playing The Last of Us while all that was going on. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
that was really fun. And then the next one I played was Horizon Zero Dawn, another
So good.
post-apocalyptic game.
Yep.
And I spent about 6 months, probably invested something like, I would guess, at least 250 hours playing the Horizon Zero Dawn.
So basically,
And
next pandemic, we're all going to your house because you're
that'll be
prepped, you're
fine.
ready. Yeah, we're coming to
I
you.
I got the studio and the games, and
Yeah,
I'm good.
and you know
So
all the survival techniques from those games. Like those
I
are
do.
you were prepping for something way bigger than COVID. You know, you got
Absolutely.
cordyceps background information. You got the zombie thing down. Dude, I love those games. I was playing those. My friends and I got into a game you might like, and it's called Valheim, and it's a PC game. That now you can actually it's been around so long now you can play it on Apple and anything else too, and I think maybe on like Xbox something like that. But basically, this whole thing is you're a Viking, right? And you're dropped into the center of this world, and it's all mapped out. Like this game was $10, and for the for the price, we were like, God, these guys put a lot of work into this world. Like when you zoom out on the world map, it is the globe. Like you're in there, and you basically don't get the map revealed until you traverse the globe, and you have to like this so you have to build your own housing, ships, you have to collect all this stuff, but there are goblins, there are trolls, dragons, wizards, like all this other shit in the
Well, that goes
world.
without saying, yeah. Hey, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, you would have to have. But like, yeah, so you're this thing. But it's so hilarious because the beginning when the game starts, you're just dropped in and you're fucking naked.
Mhm.
And you're, like you just gotta, you gotta you gotta get your own clothes, stuff like that. We got so addicted. Like we had different parts of the world where we lived, like we were just like hours went into this game. And but
Yeah.
it was an experience. And then that and like, have you ever played Bioshock?
Yeah, yeah, love BioShock. In fact, we replayed BioShock during the
Oh,
pandemic. Yeah.
that game scared the shit out of me. I'm not even gonna
Yeah.
lie to you. I mean, it didn't help the fact that I used to turn all the lights off in my house,
Oh yeah.
like
One
immerse
of the
myself in it.
greats.
Yeah,
One of the probably one of my top 10 all-time favorite
same,
video games.
absolutely. You ever
BioShock.
play Red Dead Redemption?
No, I never played that one.
You might like that one. Takes
I
it's
bet
a
I
little.
would like it.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I mean, you're a cowboy. How could you? Who doesn't want to be a cowboy?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I always generally prefer the more science fiction
yeah.
type of genre or whatever or theme.
Hmm.
But yeah, I know all about that game, and I know a lot about games that I don't play.
Yeah.
I've spent plenty of time just watching trailers and breakdowns and stuff like that, and it's
Oh,
it's
that's so
always
great.
been I've always been into it, and in fact. I don't think it says there's anything about this in my Wikipedia page, but for about 3 years, I was a columnist for official U.S. PlayStation magazine back in
No
the
way.
2000s. Yeah,
Holy shit.
did you ever read that magazine
I
back in the
did. Yeah,
2000s?
I
Yeah.
think I might still have some.
Yeah, well, somewhere between 2004 and 2007, I had a monthly column in
That is so
U.S.
cool, man.
Yeah, so for what it's worth, got a little bit of gaming cred.
Yeah,
So,
that is incredible. I love meeting a fellow gamer, dude. That makes me so. I don't know if you know. She's a musician out in New Zealand. Her name is Lady Hawk.
oh yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah,
sure.
yeah. She's a good friend. She's been on the show, but we had this like, she's a gamer, and I really didn't know that. But I was like, have we streamed? Because it was one of those things during the pandemic where you're all online, and I'm like, I wonder if you've killed me in Fortnite. I don't know. Like there's a really good chance I suck at that game right now. But yeah, it's always good fun and somebody else who's interested in gaming and stuff is it really does like keep your brain sharp too. People think it's just like this lazy kind of like, but not the games that you're talking about. You know what I mean? There's puzzles, you got to figure out shit, you're trying to survive.
Yeah,
It,
resource management,
yeah,
and yeah, there's
yeah,
there's a lot there's a lot going on. It is a great it's a great thing. I
absolutely.
I absolutely love video games, but it's been a while since I've really played anything in depth. My
Yeah,
son and I'll get together and break out some Super Mario from time to time.
those are
But
the best. Yeah.
and I haven't bought a system from the latest console generation. Oh well, no, I do have a Switch. I love the
Oh,
Switch. I,
me
th- I
too.
think that's a great machine. But I don't have any particular loyalty to Xbox or PlayStation, but I've
Same.
generally enjoyed more PlayStation games than I have Xbox. But
I
you
understand.
know,
I love that you.
whoever's got the game I want to play, that's the system I'm going to buy.
Me
So
too. That's pretty much where I'm at. I do love though, like I find that I always wind up getting a Nintendo system because that to me, like a
yeah,
Switch is the most communal. Like Mario Kart, Mario Party. Like if
yeah.
you're looking to have a group of people over, also especially with Mario Kart, if you're gonna play online, there's nothing like getting your ass kicked by a 12-year-old in Japan that you're like, how the fuck does he do? You know, like what codes is he using? Um,
Hmm.
'Cause I'm just old and I suck. Um,
Hmm.
my friends, I'd love to get your opinion on this too, and then I'm sorry, we'll go right back into music. But
That's fine.
my friends and I were talking about we were kind of like so. I had an Xbox 360 and I had an Xbox Gold membership, and it seems to be a period of time, right, where those online, like the Xbox 360, had that Microsoft Online gaming network where people were really innovating and creating their own kind of games. You remember like the Flash games, like Alien Hominid and um Castle Crashers and but like you could buy like games online like in those networks for like $10 and they seem to disappear, you know, like I don't see like a kind of indie online, you know, game creation thing anymore. And I feel like I still have my Xbox 360, but it's kind of useless because the network's gone, you know what I mean, like the like no one's innovating anymore. It's so weird, right? Like I don't know if there's
I
really a
guess
question there, but you know.
no, there was no question. I'm just going to agree with everything you said, though. Because yeah, I mean, I did have those experience, and then at that time, yeah, I was all about the Xbox 360. I never had a PS3. I was
Right.
on the 360 that through that whole console generation, and
Yeah, me too.
I very much enjoyed that machine. But
Yeah.
then you know, PS4 came out, and I'm like, there I go. You know, that's what I'm gonna
Hmm.
do. You know,
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm a big I love, you know, I'm a big Marvel guy. I love superhero stuff. I've always been a comic book nerd and that kind of thing. And
yeah, me
when
too.
oh, that's so great to hear. When the PS4 I think came out with the Spider-Man game, that's when I was like I got to get it. I want to swing through the city uh
Yeah.
and just get lost. You know, it was great. That's when I'll
Yeah,
buy it.
those are good games. I like those games a lot. And you know, I obviously I started playing. You know, my family was the first generation of people to have home video games. So we had Pong
Mm.
back in the 70s, and then you know we had Nintendo systems in the 80s, and I've just never stopped. And also, as a teenager, I worked at an arcade, you know, I was around, I was working at the arcade during the generation of things like Ms. Pac-Man
Oh yeah.
and Donkey Kong and Tron and Tempest and Joust
Tempest.
and those kind of games
Yeah.
were brand new back when I was working at the arcade. And so it's just gaming has always been a part of my life. I've done a little bit of PC gaming,
Mm.
but I've always been more of a console guy. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever go to Yestercades in Red Bank, New Jersey?
No, but that's a cool name.
Oh yeah, you gotta go if you're ever back in New Jersey. I just saw you guys in New Jersey actually not too long ago. But yeah, Yestercades is a super cool retro arcade center. Like so you go in there, you pay by the hour, which is it's super cheap. You get a card
Oh, that's cool.
and
Yeah.
everything you just said, Tempest, all Dig Dug, Pac-Man, like all those games, man, they're all in this little place. It's basically out of like Stranger Things. You know, you walk in and you're like, this is fucking cool as shit. So yeah, you got to
Yeah,
check that
yeah.
out.
Well, my teen years were exactly like Stranger Things. You know,
Oh,
I worked in record stores and arcades, and my life was like a John Hughes movie.
oh, that's fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah, I can definitely, uh, I can definitely relate. And
So
so,
then
what is your go-to if you walk into an arcade and there's all of that stuff there? Like, what's the first quarter that you're going to put in the machine?
I
What's your
am
like? I hope they have blah.
Oh man, there's two games. I'm a huge Miss Pac-Man. I have the Miss Pac-Man arcade here. Like I
Oh,
bought it
sweet.
like oh yeah. Because they like I don't know what was there was some it was some popular at the time. This one company was like bringing back these things and I bought it fully expecting it to not work. I was like I'm going to have to bring this thing. It is beautiful. I love Miss
Yeah.
Pac-Man and that's because I think my parents liked it. You know, I think they would play it, you know, um like when they were younger. You know what I mean? So like they always loved Miss Pac-Man, and then when I was a kid, so getting good at that was like approval from, you know what I mean? Like I was like, this is fucking awesome, you know. But yeah, Miss Pac-Man's incredible, and I'm trying to think of this game that my friend Joanne Filan and I, she's another comic, and we're always on the road together, so we'll look for it. Try if you can tell me what it is. I'm blanking on it. So you're in space, you know, you're this little spaceship. There's meteorites. You have to shoot the meteorites. You get these little bombs from it. But there's a fucking giant head, like a planet, and he laughs when he comes. It's like a evil maniacal laugh, and he comes into the frame, and you have to try to kill him with these bombs that you collect from the meteorites. But
Yeah, I couldn't
I'm
say.
blanking.
You know, for a few seconds, I thought I was going to be able to answer your question, but no, I can't place it. I can picture what you're talking about,
Yeah.
but it's not Defender and it's not Galaga, so I
No,
don't know.
love Galaga though. That's a great one too.
Yeah, that's my first choice. Like when I get to an arcade, Galaga is always the one I want to play the
That's a
most.
great one too. You ever play
Yeah.
the one with the moon? It's like a, I think it's like Moon Racer or something like that. But you're basically just in a car, and like all this stuff's trying to kill you. It's a side scrolling game. So you're just in this little moon car, and you have to jump over rocks, meteorites, and it
No,
sounds but it's so intense, man, because it goes faster as you go. So like
as it should. Yeah.
yeah, alien ships, and you have to shoot up and stuff. Oh, that's so good. Some of those games are remarkably difficult. Like when you think about the
Oh,
level
they're
of gaming we
brutal.
have, right? Like, and you're like, did they want us
Brutal.
to win ever? No.
Oh yeah, like Donkey Kong. I've never made it past like level 5 or
Right?
whatever my entire life. You know, I probably
Yeah,
played that game thousands of times, and I've never made it that far. You know, so
completely.
yeah, they're very very difficult. You know,
Yeah.
so
Man, I love that you're talking about your life being like a John Hughes movie and working in record stores and all that other stuff, because obviously, you know, Empire Records was like a pivotal movie for me and my generation, and obviously for you guys,
yeah,
because you had till I heard from you in there that you Marshall Crenshaw has been on the show. He's become a really good friend too. I love that dude. He's done.
sweet.
Yeah, I love him. He's so fucking awesome. Such a nice guy. But that was like, did you get a say in whether like they approached you to write a song for the movie, right?
Yeah, well, our label A&M Records was going to be in charge of the soundtrack, so they came to us several months before the release of the movie and said, "Go write a hit." Um, and then
No
then
pressure.
we found out, oh, it's a movie about, a record store. You know, it's basically the Breakfast Club set
Mm,
in a record store,
yeah.
and it made a certain amount of poetic sense because the three of the five original Gin Blossoms, myself included, we all worked in record stores.
Mm.
And so Bill, our bass player Bill, and I worked together at Tower Records in Tempe, and then our guitar
Oh,
player Scotty Johnson worked across town at Tower Records. And so, that has always been sort of foundational in how our group came together.
mhm.
And the experience in my lifetime, the experience of working in record stores in the 1980s when they were, a major cultural touchstone, was foundational to, how I ended up here, and
Yeah,
all of my big moments, in not all of them, but so many huge moments for me, as a musician, happened at the record store,
right.
and then joining a band. I joined Gin Blossoms in the back room at a Tower Records, and so when they came to us and said, you're going to write a song for a movie, we were like, okay. And oh, by the way, the movie's about a record store. I was like, well, that makes perfect sense,
Yeah,
so big great moment for us on that.
yeah. All the
Yeah.
pieces fell in together after that. I remember I was talking to Marshall about it, and he said that you had basically like he came up with the, like the musical riff or whatever, and he said, well, like he's like incredibly impressively quick. You had just heard it and then come up with the lyrics. Like almost like instantly after that. What's your kind of methodology or process and kind of stuff? Do you prefer hearing the music to something first and then coming up with the lyrics afterward, or do you have lyrics in your head most of the time? Like, how do you kind of develop a song?
Well, I have lots of different ways to do it. In general, what I do is I have a notebook full of lyric ideas, and then when I stumble upon some kind of a melody, I'll I'll go through my book of lyric ideas and see if something kind of jumps out at me and
Gotcha.
lands into the melody. But in the case of that song, uh, Jesse and Marshall came up with the chorus
Hmm.
and all of the music for that song, and then they gave it to me to write the lyrics. And so my job in that case is to sort of work backwards from the chorus and tell the rest of the story, you know.
Oh,
So
that's great.
they already had the lyrics for the chorus, and so I started, I wanted every line that I wrote for the verses to somehow land on the chorus
Right.
and, sort of lead you to it. And so you kind of, you work backwards. And so, I was thinking about, the song Till I Hear It From You. So I was thinking about the rumor mill and, being in a relationship and knowing that people are, you're hearing things, but that you can't necessarily trust or whatever. And so I
Sure.
just, like I say, in that case, I had to just write the melody and the lyrics for the verses, and the rest of the song was already done. So I just had to fill in the blanks, and I was at a point where I was really focused, and I exploited all of the resources and talents that I had at my disposal. So,
That's fantastic. And can I just say, as a teenager, that song helped me and calmed me down sometimes
oh yeah,
when
good.
I was like, oh, yeah. When you're like, when you first hear a song like that, too, you're like, okay, this is somebody who's obviously experienced the world. So he's writing about something he comes from experience of. Maybe I should just shut the fuck up and wait until I talk to the person I'm in love with,
Yeah,
before it's so funny
yeah,
because you don't,
good.
but hearing that's the kind of thing that how I've always interpreted like art or music or any of these things is probably why you know, feel so just honored is a great word to say, but like getting to meet you guys and getting to be in the same realm, and then also getting to be in the business and stuff like that too. It's like, you guys have impacts on me, on everybody else around you. You grew up listening to your music, but then there's what you interpreted by it, you know what I mean, and how it kind of guided you through life and stuff like that. And I have that with musicians, you guys, comedians that I've gotten to see over the years, and it's very weird to be like, to be like, thank you. You probably get that all the time, and it's a weird thing to
Yeah, but
probably
it's
experience
great.
because you're like, I don't know you, but like it is, it's cool to have that, man. It's such a I got to, um it's like, so you guys all came up around the same time, and I don't know if you or maybe not came up around. That's okay. Here's what I'm thinking. Sorry, I have like ADD, so I'm like all over the place sometimes. No, I don't know that I actually have it, by the way, but I had a guy on and he said I did. I don't know, who knows. You're probably like, shut the fuck up.
Sounds
But
like it. Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you do.
great. Okay, cool. An official diagnosis from Rob Wilson. That's
Yeah.
that's that's what we're getting at. So what I'm trying to say is like, Glenn Phillips and I have become friends since being on, and he's a great guy, so we'll like hang out. But there's Toad the Wet Sprocket, Gin Blossoms, all you guys tour together sometimes. And I don't know, do you understand the significance of like, so you did my MS benefits last year, you and Scott Hessel, and you guys crushed it. It was so cool to have you guys doing that. We got such a great swell of response. We have like an average of like 10,000 viewers that watched live, and it was just blowing up when you guys were in the songs. And plus it's like the
Excellent.
MS community. So just to have they're very much a community that probably also feels like maybe people don't um, understand or recognize, what they're dealing with and what's going on. So just to see that is always a joy to them. And then, it just really meant a lot to me and to everybody else that did it. So I just want to thank you for coming on to do that too. Um,
Of
and
course.
then but like it's one of those things where you get all these kind of people together and they get to see you live, and it's like, holy shit, it's like, you know what it is, it's like a superhero team up. Do you guys feel like that when you're on the, or are these just old buddies that you've known for decades and you're like, yeah, no, this makes sense, why wouldn't we tour together? Like, are
Yeah,
you
well, I'm very much in the moment and just being there with my buddies
mm,
and p- uh, playing shows and enjoying the routine of that. But I very much understand that connection,
Yeah,
and that how people associate music and the groups they were listening to with a point in their lives, and that sense of nostalgia or whatever. Those are very, very powerful moments, and in fact, for me, uh, those are the most powerful moments I've ever had in my lifetime. That's why I do this, because connecting with music on the radio or on television or at a concert, those have always been the most powerful moments that I've ever had. And they pushed me in this direction, and I've always wanted to sort of like create that for other people. So
sure.
um, while I'm not thinking about it particularly that day at the show, I'm very much in touch with that sense. And so I'm always grateful to chat with people and hear their stories. And people always want to tell you, oh, I first heard your music, or my ex-wife and I were at your concert,
Yeah,
whatever it is. Those moments of connection are incredibly powerful. It's why I do this, because it happened to me. And it was it was so powerful and
mhm,
moving that I wanted to do that, and I've wanted to do it my whole life. And so the fact I've been able to do it, and to be able to create those connections for other people, is the whole freaking point of my life, really.
hell yeah,
This
man.
is why I'm here. This is my only function.
Yeah,
And I'm glad. I think of myself as a sort of a good person, a positive force in the world. But
yeah,
what I do is pretty simple. I'm just a rock singer, and so I'm glad that these little songs that I've written and been able to sing have connected with people. That's what
yeah.
it's all about.
Absolutely, man. I'm so glad to hear that too, because I remember watching an interview one time, and not to, if he ever wants to come on, that's great. But I remember listening to John Mellencamp at one point doing some interview where he like he just kind of shit on the music and whatever, and he's like, I'm really a painter, and it's like, dude, come on. Like, acknowledge, like, and he's like, nah, he's like, I don't care about any of that shit. I don't really care about the music. And I'm like, and I wanted to be like, nobody would care about the paintings if you weren't, if you
Yeah.
weren't, so I like to hear, people that you love and doing this kind of stuff say they really appreciate it and enjoy it. It's like, fuck yeah, that's pretty special, man.
Yeah,
Um,
it is very
do,
much so.
do you, how are you with meeting other like celebrity stuff like that? Do you find yourself to be particularly starstruck, or do you remember a point in time meeting a hero of yours or anything like that where you were like holy shit, like how do I even go about it? Because I get, I'm
Yeah.
okay with it when it's comedians, and when it's outside of that, sometimes I'm like, holy fuck, what do I say?
There've been a handful of moments. For the most part, I've always uh, I can pull off those moments with some measure of grace. I'm not too impressed with celebrity.
Hmm,
I'm impressed with accomplishment. But I don't consider being a celebrity an accomplishment. It's like
good
if
point.
you if you actually like did something artistic, and that's why you are a celebrity. Okay, I can appreciate the artistic part of it, but
Right,
the celebrity thing doesn't really mean anything to me. And then again, my family being so closely associated with Saturday Night Live, there's a lot of celebrities in orbit around the people close to me.
sure,
And so I've never, I don't really fall over myself. If I'm at the Saturday Night Live after party, it's like, okay, well, there's John Hamm. Well, no, I'm not going to go interrupt him
sure, yeah.
just to say that I really loved Mad Men or
Yeah.
whatever. If a moment develops where we get to actually chat, I'm not even going to bring that up or
Right,
whatever.
right, right.
Um, but with my family being what it is, to my son Gray and his mom, I'm like the least famous person that they know. So
Right.
I don't really, I've never really cared too much about celebrity. But getting back to your question, there have been moments where I'm feeling pretty cool because I get to interact with someone whose art I really
Yeah.
have enjoyed. Maybe the best one of those moments would be meeting Phil Hartman. When we did
Wow.
Saturday Night Live, Phil Hartman was the host,
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
again, Beth, the director, Beth, had told Phil Hartman, "Oh, Robin's a really big fan, and he loves The Simpsons or whatever." And so when I walked onto the set of Saturday Night Live that day, Phil Hartman walked right up to me. He shook my hand and he goes, "Hi, Robin. I'm Troy McClure. And you may remember me from such educational films as Locker Room Towel Fight, The Blinding of Larry Driscoll." And my jaw was on the floor,
Wow.
because because I'm connected, not so much to to Phil Hartman the celebrity, but I'm connected so deeply to that which he created.
Yeah.
Very very cool moment for me. And then I guess another really big one would be uh, when I got to front Kiss on Letterman.
Oh
That
my
was
God,
that
that
was
is
kind of
phenomenal.
that was pretty cool because
Yeah.
Kiss was one of my first favorite bands. They were the first concert I ever saw. And then we were asked if we wanted to do a song for a Kiss tribute record back in the '90s. And I was the only Kiss fan in the band, but I went to my bandmates and I'm like, guys, we really need to do this. And um, I knew we couldn't really approach anything too metallic, so I went look. I started thinking about like what's a good pop song by
Yeah.
Kiss or whatever. And so we ended up doing Christine 16.
Oh,
And I got to spend the whole day in the studio with Gene and Paul
wow.
when we were mixing the track, and we just spent the whole day yucking it up. And there was a really great moment where um, in my backpack. I was so into comic books in the '90s, and I was very much into everything
Nice.
that Image was putting out, and
Oh
so
yeah.
I had I had like Spawn number 2 or 3 in my backpack. And, I had the plastic sleeves around it. And Gene from across the room, he's like, what's that comic book? I see you read comic books. What is this? And so I'm the first person to show Gene Simmons a copy of Spawn,
That is
good
fucking
comic
epic, dude.
books. So every once in a while, I feel like I'm kind of the Forrest Gump of the geek underworld, you know, where how
That's
did
a great.
this is a this is a cool moment, and it's just 2 years later, Kiss was working with Todd McFarlane on Psycho Circus, and
Yes.
McFarlane's doing Kiss action figures and shit. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
I was there the moment that Gene thought of this.
Oh man.
That's really cool. And uh so I've had really cool moments like that along the way, but it was, I was there in the studio as a peer. It
Yeah.
wasn't just me like waiting for him out by the tour bus. Can you please sign my record? It's like we're working together. We're in on this thing together. We're collaborating, and that feeling and was incredibly satisfying, knowing that I just wasn't sucking up to one of my heroes. I was actually
Part of the
like
yeah.
I was part of what was happening.
That's
So.
incredible, man. What a
Mm.
great see, that's another connection too, the Todd McFarlane, the Spawn thing, and then the kid that's
Mhm.
oh man, 6 degrees of you. Holy shit. Forget Kevin Bacon. But
Yeah.
um I would love to talk to you real quick about the Smithereens and your involvement with them because I got to know Pat a little bit. I was living in California at the time, but because I'm a Jersey kid, they were doing the Jersey Shore Music Festival and they asked me if I wanted to open for the Smithereens, and it was Cindy, Civic. Yep, Cindy
Civic. Yeah.
Civic. Yeah, and she had talked to my manager at the time because I think they had both gone to college together, or they may have been some dating roommate, girlfriend, or whatever the hell it was. So they were like, "Oh, do you want to open for the Smithereens?" And I was like, "It's not even a fucking question." So I like flew back from LA, to do it, and Pat was like, just larger than life, dude, and could not have been cooler and nicer. Just very fascinated about like comedy and comedians and who I had opened for and worked with and knew. So like even before the show, it was just like, I had gotten there and I didn't know, really, I try to stay out of people's way, especially when I was younger as a comic. I was like, nobody wants to, I'm just gonna chill out in the back. And then he had asked where I was, and then Cindy had found me and was like, he wants to sit, come say hi and whatever. I'm like, okay, cool. And I almost missed my call to go on stage because we
Yeah.
just sat in the back and he was just shooting the shit, nicest dude. And then actually came out to watch my set, which I just remember him sitting in the audience and like just looking and laughing. So I was like, what a cool dude, like, to do this, because it just you know what it's like when you're a young performer. You kind of ride on that high, for a bit, especially when it's somebody that you like and admire and respect. So you're like, that carried me for a little a little bit after that.
Yeah.
So I got to know him a little bit then, and he invited me to open for them at the House of Blues after that, and just the nicest dude. So I love that you're working with them and carrying on, their legacy and stuff. So I just love to know how, that came about. And um
Well, they're actually Cindy, who you just mentioned, Cindy Civic, um, is kind of she's their tour manager and she
mhm.
does a lot of their promotion, but she's Jim's fiance,
Oh,
Jim Babjack, lead guitar player.
okay.
And Cindy also used to work at MTV back in the 80s, and so she knows my ex-wife Jenna.
Oh my god.
And so what happened is after Pat passed away, they started putting on they were going to do a tribute concert for Pat.
Hmm.
And Cindy went to the other Smithereens and said we should get Robin from Gin Blossoms to sing a couple of tunes. And their first reaction was, "Well, we don't know this guy.
Right.
We don't really know this dude. Why should we invite him to be a part of this, important show?" And Cindy's like, "Trust me, this is gonna be this is gonna be good." And so I was tasked with singing a couple of their tunes, Blues Before and After and Top of the Pops.
Hmm.
And so I showed up to sound check, prepared, and I kicked ass. And then I went back to my hotel room to lay down for a while, and the phone rings, and they're like, "Somebody just canceled. Can you do Blood and Roses?" And I'm like, "You're goddamn right, I can do Blood and Roses." And so I
Yeah.
hang up the phone and I try to get back to sleep, and then another half hour goes by, the phone rings again, and they're like, "Can you do Behind the Wall of Sleep?" And I'm like, "You're goddamn right, I can do Behind the Wall of Sleep." And so, I got to participate in the show, in a greater capacity than I was originally planned. I really hit it off with the guys, and at the end of the
Nice.
night, I went into their dressing room to say goodbye, and I just kind of spat it out there, and I'm like, I'd love to do some more shows with you guys. I would love to, sing for the Smithereens.
Wow.
And I remember Dennis, the drummer, Dennis' face kind of lighting up, like, Pat had only passed away 2 months before, and
Hmm.
I don't know if they had even gotten around to thinking about whether or not they were ever going to play again.
Right.
But I remember this moment where Dennis kind of looked up at me and was like, that would be really cool, whereas he really sort of got it. And so,
Yeah.
basically I just volunteered to start singing for them. And I wish I could do more. It's so much fun being a part of that band and singing all of those great songs.
Right.
And being a part of one of my all-time favorite bands. It's the kind of thing where if you could go back in time and tell your 20-year-old self, "Hey, just hang in there. One day, you're gonna be on TV with Kiss. You're gonna be singing for the Smithereens. It's gonna be all right." And
Oh,
so I'm just so grateful because you start out just a guy in a bedroom, trying to write these stupid songs. And I'm like doing open mic nights and stuff, and it's like,
yeah.
God, I would love to be in a local band. I would love to be on the cover of the New Times, or just for my peer. I'd love to be able to walk into the record store and see my own record there on the shelf,
Right.
and those were always like the things that motivated me. I was never thinking, one day you'll make enough money to buy a house, or one day you'll get to a point where your band starts doing private parties for like way more money than
Right.
anything else you've ever made. You don't think about stuff like that. You just think, I want to write a great song. I want to be a part of this scene, this community. And, that's was what was my motivation all along.
Yeah.
And I've never cared about celebrity or money. I care now about money, but that was never the thing,
The driving motivation, yeah.
it was never about like being famous. I never cared about being famous. I
Right.
always wanted to be successful.
That's
I
great,
wanted
man.
I wanted to be good at what I did, and I wanted to be recognized or acknowledged in some way for doing what I love really well. That was always my motivating factor. It was never um, being any kind of a celebrity. And fortunately for Gin Blossoms, we're in this sort of gray area where we're a successful band and we're relatively well known or whatever, but we never really reached a point where it became obnoxious because of fame or anything
Sure.
like that. I don't think of myself as famous, but maybe compared to some other people, you might be able to make the case that I am. But
No, absolutely.
again,
Yeah.
I don't care. I don't care. What matters to me is like being a rock singer and being in touch with the kid inside me that wanted to do that.
Yeah, and that comes through, man. I mean, I've seen you guys more than a few times, and I've had Scott on the show. I think like during it must have been during the pandemic. There was so many times that the pandemic is almost a blur as far as like people that I've had, because I'm like, God, those years, like, kind of, I have some in your boat too, where I was enjoying like the time, and getting to connect, but they're a blur. Like, they really are like one of those things where I'm like, how
Mhm.
long ago was that? Uh, um, but yeah, it comes through, man. I've gotten to see you guys. I think the first time, I mean, no, the first time I got to tell you this real quick too before I'm sorry, I'm keeping you a little over time, and I just lost my fucking headphone. So totally professional operation on this end of the table, by the way.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, but so this is like a cool nerdy moment for me, right? So when my friend had just turned 21, and again, like I said, like, we love the Gin Blossoms, so we just had like all your CDs and stuff, and whatever, we drive around. So she turns 21, and we found out that you guys are playing at Jenkinson's in Point Pleasant. So I'm like, we're this is what I'm taking her to see, we're going to see the Gin Blossoms in Jenks. It was fucking awesome, right? We were so close too. Like, it was just one of those things. And you guys came out, and sorry, I'm like nerding out now. This is completely unprofessional. But so like, you guys actually came out afterward too, and like, hung out with everybody, and like, it was such a, Point Pleasant, Jenkinson's, such short trash shit, but I'm a short trash kid. So we were,
Right.
yeah.
Good for
So,
you.
thank you. So we loved that whole thing, right? Cut to, and I wasn't doing, no, I think I just started doing, yeah, I started doing stand up when I was 20. So I was still like super, super young. Cut to like 10, maybe 15 years later, I got to perform. They asked me if I want to do a show at Jenkinson's, and I got to headline a gig at Jenkinson's. And
All
my
right.
face, oh yeah, and the only I kept in interviews when I was doing press for it, I just kept saying, the only reason I gave a shit about it was because I was like, the Gin Blossoms were on this fucking stage when I was
Yeah.
21. Like, it's such a weird, but it's that thing, man, where you're like, this is so fucking cool. It was just a
Yeah.
crazy, yeah. So I'm glad I got to say that too, because I almost forgot about that story.
Well,
But
that's what it's all about is
yeah,
is those kind of moments.
yeah, absolutely, man. I think I'm going to ask you the last three questions that I ask every guest on the show that has taken it. I think
Okay.
you kind of answered the first one, so if you want to skip it, you're more than welcome to. But the first one is, if you can go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself that would help you today?
Yeah. I think I pretty much did answer that. I was like, I would hate to tell myself anything that would interfere with where I ended up.
Oh, yeah,
So I think I would just probably tell myself, just hang in there, and you're going to be okay.
great, man.
You know,
Love it.
rather than risk, uh, you know, some major change in the timeline,
Hmm.
then I would probably just say that.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah, you wouldn't be like, stop Elon. You're like, who the fuck is Elon?
Yeah, yeah, like there's a moment back in the 90s where I had a chance to invest in this business. How I was building my own studio, and these people, my friends came to me and they're like, you want to chip in 50 grand, and
Wow.
you can be a partner in our business." And they went on to sell that brewery to Anheuser-Busch for about $150 million. And
Holy.
so if I had invested, my $50,000 investment would have turned into potentially tens of millions of dollars.
Right.
And so there's that moment where I think about it. But if I had done that, my son Gray might not be here, because just enough of the timeline
Sure.
would have been altered to where I might not have gotten Jenna pregnant that night,
Yeah.
or whatever. And that
Yeah.
that was
Butterfly effect.
that was the one and only shot I had to actually have him. So, in general, I don't. I wish I could go back in time and talk to Doug Hopkins, our founding guitar player. I miss him terribly, and his
Mm,
death was such a tragedy. But I don't think there's any way I could show up, a 59-year-old Robin with all of this wisdom and experience and like have actually convinced him to do anything differently.
sure.
But I, that's like maybe the saddest thing in my life, the baggage that I carry around. Doug's death
Yeah.
is definitely like the hardest thing that I have in my heart to come to grips with, But I that being said, I think Doug would be really proud
Oh,
right now if he
absolutely.
if he could if he could see us. So anyway,
Yeah. Absolutely,
what's your
man.
next question? Let's move on
Yeah.
from that depressing shit.
Yeah. No. Well, let's see. So the second question is, what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
Well, mm, I mean, I guess Doug's life,
Wow.
certainly. I mean, things would be so different if he had it within him to stick around.
Right.
These are pretty dark answers. I guess
No, it's
also
okay.
my marriage probably
Mm,
had to end for me to wind up in this place where I feel good and content, and I love my family, and I love Jenna, and she's still a big part of my life and whatnot. But
right.
the marriage had to end, and
Yeah.
aside from that, I don't know, the second Bush presidency, I don't know, whatever,
Yeah.
but
That's great. Ominous
that's,
answer.
yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
No, I hear you, man.
Hmm.
And the last question ties into the theme of the show, so it's a bit of a ridiculous question. But if this was a genuine dystopia, more so than it is now, what do you, it's twofold. What do you think? Like you wake up tomorrow and you find out everybody knows it's the end of the world. You got 24 hours left. What do you think would be the cause? And it could be anything you want. So it could be a political collapse, climate change, aliens, zombies, you playing those video games. So whatever you want it to be. And what's going to be your epic death in those 24 hours? How do you want to go out?
Well, if I could choose, my, how I would die, it
Yeah.
would be in the jaws of a Tyrannosaurus Rex as it goes over a cliff into a flaming volcano. You know, that would be
That's
my
great.
number one. I'd like to be killed by a dinosaur as we fall over a cliff. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I don't know. It could be any one of those. Humanity's on the precipice, and
Mm,
we're monkeys barely out of the jungle. Just looking up like, what is all of this?
right.
And our technology is far outpacing our emotional and intellectual development. So it could be any one of those things. But assuming the apocalypse happened for real and the
Hmm.
grocery stores were all closed and stuff like that, one of my first thoughts would be I need to learn how to make a bow and arrow. you know.
Yeah,
I, I'm gonna
absolutely.
I'm gonna need ammunition,
Yeah,
and I just assume learn how to make it out of sticks.
yeah. That's that
So
Last of Us training, man.
yeah, absolutely. You know, where you gotta you gotta scavenge for what you need. You know, and so I think about The Last of Us or uh, uh, the Walking Dead. Type scenarios, and it's like, okay, well, if I'm gonna make it, I need to be able to, like make my own fishing pole
Hmm.
or whatever. So that those would be my type of concerns. I think I would go find a really large sporting goods store and just live there. Uh,
Yeah,
it's like,
that's
okay,
fantastic.
okay, well, I'm gonna need XYZ. Well, it's right
Yeah,
there. So
that's great.
you know, yeah.
Yeah, and plenty of cups in those stores too, man. You can't be, you gotta. They never buy that shit back. You know what I mean? There's never any like, nobody's ball tapping anybody in the zombie apocalypse. I don't get it.
Why would they?
Yeah, no, but and also, real quick too, because let's just get this. For you, do you guys always we always do an after party at SNL? Do you remember anything in particular from, after you guys got done doing your first SNL thing, the part like the cast party and stuff like that? Any
Well,
particular memory?
I don't. Jenna told me a story recently that um where apparently I showed up for one of the after parties and I was kind of drunk, and apparently Will Ferrell went over to Jenna and said, like, you need to go help Robin. He's really fucking drunk or whatever. And I don't remember that. But no, the moment I really remember is when we were on the show in 96. At the end of the night, Phil Hartman came into our dressing room and fired up a joint. And so we smoked a joint with Phil Hartman in our dressing room, and he told us a story about when he was a roadie for Hendrix.
Holy
And
shit!
so and I remember all of us just laughing. And of course, Phil Hartman, the way he can tell a story was really great. And anyway, the whole story winds up with the kick drum was coming off the riser, and Phil Hartman had to go out there and hold the kick drum in place while Hendrix and the Experience were up there and playing. And he says, Hendrix looks back in the middle of a solo and goes, "You're rocking now, roadie man." And coming out of Phil Hartman, that was pretty sweet. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's fantastic, dude. This has been a blast for me. I hope you had a good time.
Oh, you bet I did. Thanks,
Thank you so
thanks.
much for doing this, dude. I appreciate it.
You
Uh,
bet. Well, you hang in there, and maybe next year, if you run out of other people, you can call me back. We'll do it again,
that would
and
be fantastic.
stay in touch.
Dystopia tonight.